Reaction from lawmakers to the president's diagnosis has been pouring in. Members of Congress on both sides of the aisle have been sending their well wishes to the president and First Lady. CBS News State Department and Foreign Affairs reporter Christina Ruffini has more from Capitol Hill.
Reaction poured in from political friends and foes alike to the news that the president and First Lady have been diagnosed with coronavirus.
Let us just all pray for the president's health. Nonetheless, hopeful that it will be a transition to a saner approach to what this virus is all about.
Jennifer and I surely keep he and the First Lady in our prayers for a quick and speedy recovery.
During a House subcommittee hearing Friday, Democrats offered well wishes, but made a point of also criticizing the president's handling of the pandemic.
The president's response to the coronavirus crisis has been a failure of historic proportions.
Ohio Republican Congressman Jim Jordan, who says he'll get tested after attending Tuesday night's presidential debate, said the diagnosis won't sideline the president.
Even with this virus, he will still be out communicating and talking to the American people via Zoom, via telephone, like he's done for our House candidates around the country.
One major concern for Republicans here on the Hill is how the president's diagnosis could potentially impact hearings for his Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett. Republicans are trying to get Barrett confirmed before November's vote, while also mitigating concerns about their own health and safety.
Our biggest enemy, obviously, is what we were talking about at the beginning of the interview, the coronavirus, keeping everybody healthy and well and in place to do our job.
Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the Senate is taking every precaution. Christina Ruffini, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
For more on all this, I want to bring in Nancy Cordes and Molly Hooper. Nancy is our CBS News chief congressional correspondent, and Molly is a CBSN political contributor. Welcome to both of you. Nancy, let me start with you. Senator Mike Lee announced that he is also tested positive for COVID-19 just days after visiting the White House. What are you hearing about this?
Well, he says that he started having symptoms yesterday. At first, he thought they might be allergies, but then he got a test, and it turns out that he is positive. And so he says at the advice of the Capitol physician, he's going to be isolating for 10 days. This really was startling news on Capitol Hill because everyone has been around Mike Lee all week, including us. He met with Amy Coney Barrett on Tuesday. He attended lunch with his fellow Republican senators the day after that. He has been out and about, and he is a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So he is on the committee that will be holding hearings for Coney Barrett, scheduled just 11 days from today. There are a number of senators now who either came into contact with him, came into contact with the president, who are also deciding to get tested because they just don't know if they may have been exposed to this virus. It's a really fluid situation on Capitol Hill. It's not just Mike Lee, but other Republicans who came into contact with the president, either on Air Force One or at the White House, who are now deciding to isolate and get tested as well.
A lot of test results are being waited on at the moment as we speak. Molly, tell us about some of the other reactions we're seeing from lawmakers to this news.
Well, it's not just Republicans. Nancy pointed out that there have been Republicans that have gone down to the White House and have met with Amy Coney Barrett. But there's also some Democrats as well who've been down to the White House in the past week to talk about China with various members of the White House staff. And so there is some concern that they could have been exposed as well. And that's something overall that's concerning up on Capitol Hill because, you know, Nancy can go into more detail on this. I've been hunkering down here in Arlington. But overall, the Capitol does not have an overarching testing strategy. They aren't testing staffers on a regular basis. They aren't testing members of Congress on a regular basis. And these are individuals who go home, come back to the Capitol on a regular basis. And so there has been widespread concern among the staff, particularly who's interacting with their member who may be exposed. And not everybody's wearing masks like they should in the offices. So that is one concern. But overall, members are concerned for the president. Again, there is that issue of, you know, what's going to happen with us, meaning the Capitol Hill staffers.
Right. There's a combination of course, concern over the president, but also suddenly realizing how much danger anyone there on Capitol Hill, is in, really. So, Nancy, Speaker Pelosi is third in line for the White House. Clearly, we are not anywhere near this yet. But talk to us about the line of succession and whether there's a contingency plan in place if President Trump or Vice President Pence are simply unable to carry out their duties.
Sure, these contingency plans do exist. If the president is incapacitated, usually it's the vice president who would then take control until the president is able to assume his duties once again. And then after that, it goes to the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. And following her, the president pro tem of the Senate, essentially the most senior member of the majority party, who happens to be Senator Chuck Grassley, and then to a couple of members of the president's cabinet, Mike Pompeo and Stephen Mnuchin. As you point out, Tanya, we haven't gotten to that yet by any stretch. The president, his aides say, has mild symptoms. Vice President Pence has tested negative. So that's not anything that people are talking about right now. What they are talking about is whether the House and the Senate should have rapid testing after all. You might recall that the White House offered to send rapid test kits to the Capitol, but that was rejected by both Nancy Pelosi and the leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, because they felt it was unfair that Congress would be able to get access to these tests when so many people around the country couldn't. So they don't really do much, if any, testing on Capitol Hill unless someone starts to exhibit symptoms. But after what we've seen in the past 24 hours, there are a lot of aides that I've been speaking to who say, you know what, maybe we ought to rethink this, because after all, you have so many lawmakers coming back and forth from homes around the country, and that really increases the risk.
And Nancy, you're there so often. Personally, how do you feel about this situation? Do you feel that the reporters have been well taken care of?
Well, reporters have kind of gotten together and tried to come up with various ways to make things a little safer, pooling our responsibilities from time to time, taking turns so that there are fewer reporters at every given event. But that is, that only goes so far when you've got a lot of lawmakers around who obviously aren't doing the same thing. Just this week, we saw plenty of lawmakers who were in hearings not wearing masks, who were walking through the halls not wearing masks, talking to us not wearing masks, or wearing masks incorrectly under their nose. There were dozens of Republican senators who met with Amy Coney Barrett, the president's Supreme Court nominee, this week in close quarters. They weren't wearing masks, and neither was she. So, in a lot of ways, it is a difficult situation on Capitol Hill. You don't have as many aides there. You certainly don't have the public there right now because it's closed to the Capitol's closed to the public. But it can still be difficult when you're in tight quarters and hallways and the like to try to get distance from both your fellow reporters and from the people who we cover.
Absolutely. Well, of course, it goes without saying, we hope you're staying safe, Nancy, and all of our colleagues there. Molly, Congress has still been at a standstill over an economic relief package. The House did pass a $2 trillion plan last night, but it is unlikely to get through the Senate. Here's what House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said about the president's diagnosis in an interview this morning. Let's listen.
But maybe this will be the moment where people will say, okay, mask, distance, sanitation, tracing, treatment, and also recognizing that many people in the minority community, people of color, disproportionately affected by this, people in the Native American community, very, very disproportionately affected by this. So let's understand the diagnosis that our country has had at the highest level.
So could President Trump and others at the White House testing positive for coronavirus impact any movement on this economic relief package, Molly?
Possibly, but what I'm hearing from my sources, and I've been talking to a lot of moderates in the House of Representatives for my podcast article along with Molly Hooper, and it's been interesting because I've actually heard that it's the Democrats who are putting a lot of pressure on Speaker Pelosi to strike a deal. In fact, 18 Democrats last night did not vote for the $2 trillion package because it was not going to be, as you said, accepted by the Senate or the president. The latest I've heard from Democrats and some Republicans is that Speaker Pelosi is getting a lot of pressure again by members of her own conference, because with the airline employees about to lose, 30,000 airline employees are about to be laid off, and quite a few of those moderate Democrats are worried that that blowback will come back on Speaker Pelosi, because for the past few months, the House has not really budged from the $3.4 trillion and now $2 trillion essentially package when the White House is pushing for 1.2. Speaker Pelosi did send out a Dear Colleague letter today to her colleagues that basically said, we're still negotiating, we're still far apart on several points, the unemployment insurance, schools, testing, tracing, and essentially the appropriations. But it's from the Republicans that I'm hearing, they, who were not very optimistic, I'd say about a week and a half ago, are now getting more optimistic that there will be some movement.
Right. All right. Well, Nancy Cordes and Molly Hooper, thank you so much for joining us.